Listen carefully. Watch. Learn. Mortal Kombat has begun.
There's a war coming.
We need to fight before it's too late.
Finish them!
Mortal Kombat started as this very simple 8-bit fighting game that was revolutionary at the time. I liked the idea that we could bring these characters to a level that hadn't really been seen before.
Get over here!
Welcome to the NYFA Australia Theatre. Simon, it's nice to have you here.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Take us back to the beginning. How did that happen for you? Where did things kick off?
I grew up in Perth, kind of outer suburbs of the most isolated city in the world.
Yeah.
And really just always had this feeling that I wanted to make movies. But when you grow up there and it's just not even, you don't even know how that's even feasible. So I could draw, and I love design, I love typography, I love anything in the visual arts, really.
Yeah.
So I did graphic design out of school, and then just sort of got into the advertising industry and became an art director in advertising, and then moved to the States.
Yeah.
Worked at a few agencies there, and then ultimately realised that I'd got to a point where I thought, okay, well, I've got to, if I'm going to be a director, which is, as time went on, that's, you know, what I realised I wanted to do. As I learnt more, I thought, okay, I've got to do this. I mean, at that point, I'd done no film studies at all.
Had you been directing at that point?
No.
You'd
And
been
so,
sort of producing.
Yeah, but what I'd done, and I sort of realised it now, is as an art director working in an agency, you go off and you go on the commercial shoot. So you create the ad, and then I would go along to these commercial shoots and supervise the production. And I'd sit there and I think, I want to do that. I don't want to be here. I want to be doing what that person's doing.
Yeah.
And I sort of, after several years of going on that and just realising I'm sitting in the wrong seat here, I just thought, well, I've got to do it. So then I just started making little spec. The first thing I ever really did was these little, I worked with my writing partner at the time, an incredibly funny, very brilliant, smart guy called Richard Overall, who the two of us made these little, it was just at the start of when you could send stuff, video around the internet.
Yeah, right.
Showing my age there. But it was,
I remember those
yeah,
days.
It was Absolute Vodka would always, so the agency I was working at in New York we had the Absolute Vodka account. So we did these little videos we got minibar size Absolute bottles, and they do this it was a very iconic print campaign back then. Yeah. So we said, why don't we just do some videos rather than doing a print campaign?
Yeah.
So I shot those, and then went and then did some other stuff within the agency that I directed, and then got a reel together. Yeah,
right. Yeah.
And then the production company I did some of these commercials with other directors, I said, look, can I come and be a director?
Have a go?
Yeah, and they said, sure.
Interesting. So no actual formal study in film?
No, so you're all far more learned than I am about this, so you're all good.
I mean, it's not that much of a leap from sort of graphic design, art direction to the screen, right?
So once I started directing commercials, the thing that you have as a commercial director is you get lots of opportunities to fuck things up all the time. And it's when you fail at things and you say, I wanted to try and make it feel like this, and then it doesn't work, and then but you get another opportunity, and then you try it and it works. So it's trial and error of making stuff is really what it's all about.
Is that because in advertising you're kind of looking for a moment?
Well, no, it's any executional tone,
Yeah.
rhythm, style, whatever you're trying to do and whatever your take is on that particular idea.
Yeah.
Trying to manifest it using the tools at your disposal, right? So it's a very, you learn quickly when you get many opportunities to try different things.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I think that's what making commercials was so amazing, because it allowed for that process, that creative process to happen. And
Yeah.
And so you can actually, well, not all, but a lot of commercial directors start by directing comedy commercials, right?
Sure.
Because most commercials are trying to be funny.
Yeah.
And I didn't really want to do that. I mean, I like humor and I like having a laugh and stuff, but it wasn't really what I wanted to necessarily do. So I did these, you got to pay the rent in New York, so you just do anything to, and it was all great. Anything, I mean, I couldn't believe anyone would just employ me for a start, so I was thrilled. But then what I realised was, I was doing enough of these comedy things, and I was starting to sort of be known for, doing people like me for the comedy of it stuff. And I was like, well, I'm going down the wrong path here. This is not right. Because, and I wanted to get into bigger scale and more serious stuff. And that, there are opportunities, but they're not as much in commercials. So that took a moment to sort of jump tracks tonally.
Yeah.
To A, learn how to do it.
Yeah.
And then B, strategically think, okay, well, how am I going to do this? Because people only send you stuff of what's on your reel.
Yeah.
If
If they believe you can
hey,
do
let's
it.
get this guy who's got comedy stuff on his reel and we'll get him to do this,
The serious one.
amazing video game
Chanel.
script or something, well, who's going to do that?
Sure.
So anyway, so you sort of learn to answer your, so I'm off-roaded there, I'm a bit prone to that.
Everyone here knows how much I love a tangent.
Yeah, okay,
So-
good. Okay. But yes, so you learn by, I mean, I guess the essence of my answer is you learn stuff by making stuff, because that's the only way you'll try something, you'll see how it plays out, and then you'll get that alchemy of that experiment and you'll understand it, and then you realize, okay, no, I want it to feel more like this, and why did that? And then that never stops. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just constant.
I mean, ultimately, that's your film school.
Yeah.
That's when you were
Yeah.
doing. And what's interesting, I think, and it's a nice segue into where I wanted to go, is there's clearly an element there where your interest is in storytelling. You sort of, when I sort of sense you were in the world of imagery, art direction.
It's all about having the audience feel something. That is absolutely at the sort of core of it, where you are moved by whether it be a commercial, but I didn't feel like there was enough opportunity within the shorter form,
Right.
to make an audience feel what I wanted them to feel, and to be able to actually move an audience, entertain an audience in that way. And obviously characters and their relationships and the stories is a way to emotionally move an audience. So,
Sure.
It's why, so the storytelling aspect of it was, again, that, leaping, so going from commercials and comedy commercials, then I started doing the video game commercials, and they become bigger, but the commercials are still very much about an idea.
Yeah. That was for PlayStation.
Yeah, PlayStation and Halo and stuff
Yeah.
like that, and Call of Duty. But it's an idea. You talk about the idea, whereas in features you talk about the story.
Yeah. Interesting.
And they're two quite different things. There's a lot of overlap, but the narrative and the story. So when I went into the first Mortal Kombat, I knew what people were saying to me. Oh, it's about the story. It's all about the story. I had to understand and feel that the experience of that storytelling process to really understand that there's story within story within story within story. So there could be a frame. It could be like even this morning we were talking about a specific thing on the sequel where we're talking about, I obviously can't say anything, but we're talking about this one thing, and we had to tell a story within that then allows the audience to understand the story that's unfolding in that particular scene because that character is doing and saying that. So every single frame, everything you're setting, every decision you make is about how does this story best unfold, and that's on a character and relationship. It's the relationship between the characters that engages us emotionally. And so that's here, but it never stops. You're always constantly. So I sort of learned, and I'm still learning, that process and that understanding of, okay, what does it mean? What is the depth of what storytelling actually means is sort of never stops because you're always doing it. So
there's story in the imagery you're creating as well.
Yeah.
Which is where your original profession was, right?
Yeah, I think I am visually reasonably okay at sort of being able to sort of tell a visual story.
Yeah.
Although it's sort of constantly reminded how you just got to sort of keep pushing that and being better and better at that. So I could, after shooting so many commercials, I could execute the production of something quite. That became
the technical side of things.
Yeah, and how to make something feel big and feel rich and feel interesting and but then the story that lasts for feature length, that was the part that I was like, no, I have to get better at that. I have to understand that better.
Ebbs and flows. And
just the whole structure of the script. So the last couple of years and during COVID, I've just sort of really immersed myself in screenwriting and structure and story, and because that was the part that I was really sort of feeling like I needed to work on. So that just never really stops. You're always looking for the best way to tell the story.
Yeah, always more to learn in creativity.
Yeah.
So was it from your advertising in the gaming world? Is that what took you to Mortal Kombat, or is that just pure coincidence?
No, after the PlayStation commercial, I got an agent, features, and they reached out to me. And one of the first things I said to him was, my first film, I don't want it to be a video game adaptation, because I wanted to sort of do. I wanted to expand and sort of always trying to do different things and move into different spaces.
And I think I read that you didn't really know much about Mortal Kombat.
No, nothing.
Right.
At all.
Yeah.
I still struggle. I'm better now. But it's so dense and rich and layered. There's so much to it. It's unbelievable.
Right, yeah.
It's really, really...
okay. So despite that instruction...
Well, yes,
they still
but then
came back with
it's really, really hard to get a movie made.
Well, of course, yeah.
It's so hard. And couple of years later, he then says, look, I've got the script for Mortal Kombat. And I was just like, look, I'm not. He said, just read it.
Several years, did you say?
Oh, yeah.
Years later.
Oh, my God, yeah.
Wow, yep.
Yeah, it's like climbing a mountain and the mountain's falling away from you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to. But it's hard
These
work.
These are the hard yards.
It's really hard.
Sure.
And you have to be persistent.
This is pitching. You're pitching ideas in?
Talking, meeting.
Right.
Things start to happen and then they fall over. I get a development deal on this. That didn't happen.
Yeah.
It's relentless.
Right. Okay.
You just got to be persistent.
Sure. Never give up. And
then
so, Mortal Kombat.
So then come through and then... he said, just meet the guys over at New Line and they're good guys and just, they'll be open to whatever take you have on it. So I had a read and I was like, okay, well, I'll go in and meet them. And then I went through the process of meeting the various producers along the way. And then I met the New Line guys and, my whole approach was Mortal Kombat is popular because the characters are interesting.
Yeah.
It's about the characters. That's what people love. And so we have to really pay respect to the characters and present them and bring them to life in a way that feels like it matters. And so my whole thing was every character needs to be fighting for what matters to them. So, and that sort of helps make the characters have a richer feeling and all that sort of stuff. And also, I didn't really, even though the violence in the game is a very important piece of the DNA in the game, if we were only worrying about that, then we would ultimately fail, I think, because whilst a lot of people love that side of it, it's really not the main essence of it. So I wanted to do something that had the respect and a grounded feeling to what we're doing, and they wanted to do that as well. And then we went about a couple of years of script development, and then we.
Okay, so you actually got it. I was just wondering that you got involved in the script development. I mean, it's an interesting sort of backstory. Young Cole with the birthmark and finding that he has this heritage, and I mean, I thought it was interesting as well the way that diversity was brought in, the concept of that this was kind of a global, diverse cultures from all around the world were involved in this. Was that all there from the beginning, or is that something that evolved, or?
Yeah, the Cole character was there when I got the script. It evolved a bit. Ultimately we all wanted to bring the characters to life in the most authentic way possible. So it was really about making sure they, when you bring us characters who are somewhat, very fantasy based and very unreal in many regards, and you've got to bring them into reality. There's a lot of things that you have to think about in what's going to make that character feel heroic and powerful, and all the things that was needed for each of the characters. So, but we always wanted to do it the right way, as far as making sure that each actor who represented them was represented from exactly the place they are in the game. So Shang Tsung is Chinese, and it's just kind of and so we just did that all the way along. So it was just, it's the right way to do it, and it also is right for the characters. So that was always that part of it. We got towards as the production started. But there was a lot in it, but we also moved the script a long way as well in the process of development, and also even when you're shooting and then editing, it never ever stops. You're constantly trying to improve the story, and all the way through the process.
Yeah,
it
even
never
in the
stops.
edit suite.
It always, I mean, it's amazing what can be done.
And how faithful did you feel like? I mean, obviously, there's only so much you can do when you've got a two-dimensional game, but by this stage, it's been around for 20 years or something, 30 years. And I mean, there's going to be that fan base that is keeping you on your toes, right? Is that something you really needed to consider, or did you consider that?
Every day. Yeah. No, I think doing that. I did a campaign for Halo, and then did the PlayStation. And what I learned from that experience was that the fans, and also I played video games a lot. And I know what happens to a video gamer's brain when they engage with that material. You really do live it and breathe it, and it all matters. It all really, really matters. So the fans have in my mind, a very legitimate ownership of the material, and a very powerful connection with it. So I wanted to make sure, and we're constantly trying to make sure that what the essence of what's in the game, or what's in the lore, or what's been stories within it, that all gets respected. It doesn't always mean that we always follow it exactly, but because when you bring something from a video game into a film, it doesn't always directly translate. So there are some things that we we make decisions on to change, but you got to really have a reason for it, and you got to think about it. It's got to be the reason. It's got to be a reason that is only going to, hopefully going to make the film better. So, but constantly trying to respect the fans and elevate material that really deserves its massive scope and scale, and certainly the next film pushes things even further massively.
Yeah, great. Okay, so how then do you go about that casting process? Did you have certain performers in mind, or were they presented to you? How did that come about?
So it's a combination of things. So I had specific people in mind, both the first one and the second one, and some of those people are in the movie.
Yeah.
And then quite a few actually. And then there's also just good old-fashioned casting process.
Yeah.
So the casting director, Rich D'Elia, and then the Heesums here in Adelaide, you just cast.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, you just let the best performance rise to the top. And obviously especially with something like this where there's an otherworldly quality to the characters, that there's a many number of things on the list of criteria on what and who's going to be right for a role. But ultimately it's who delivers a performance that you believe. And sometimes someone will do that in a way that you're not necessarily predicting. So they'll do something and you just think, I just believe them.
Yeah, sure.
I'm always, in fact, I would say this is probably the essence of what I'm looking for in every single thing, whether it be a prop on set or whether it be a casting choice or whether it be someone's performance. I'm always looking for, do I believe it? Does it feel authentic? Doesn't mean I'm always succeeding in that, but that's what I'm always trying to get to.
Yeah.
And then asking the questions of like, why are they doing that? Why would that character go from there to there? Like, what?
That's my favourite question.
So you got to ask all that about everything. It's like, why would it do that? Okay, let's think about this. What would happen if this was real? What would actually happen? And it's just constant conversations about, and then when you get to the casting process, it's sort of it just continues. You're just like, okay, do I believe this? Do I believe this person's performance? And there are people who just like smashed it. Right. Instantly, it was like bang, and then you would see other people, and then no one ever got to the level of the person, and then you hire the person.
Yeah.
And then there are other times it's like, no, that's who I want.
Yeah.
And like Hiroyuki Sanada, for instance, took some getting, but I wanted him. And once he found, we had a conversation, then he was like, it just took him a moment to hook into it and understand and realize and kind of what I was going for. And then he was like, got it. Okay. So, not everyone's, each role is kind of different,
Yeah, yeah. And then, but from an actor's perspective, is it about looking for the originality in the performance, or is it just about finding that truth? Or is it maybe a little
you mean what do I see, or what are they?
Yeah, what do you look at? Like, what is it? What do you think sort of really calls to you, I guess, as the director when you're seeing an actor's performance? I'm just thinking for some of our acting students here in terms of thinking about how to perform in that moment. What to think about, how to fall into that character, how to win over the director. Is there something you're looking for, or it's just there when you see it?
You are looking for, well, certainly what I'm looking for is what I said before, which is, do I believe this performance? Yeah. And therefore, as an actor, for acting students, you have to truly understand it yourself. So that when you deliver your performance, you believe it as well. So authenticity comes from you, and it doesn't really matter what the role is. I think obviously, I'm not an actor.
Yeah.
Far from it, even though I toyed with it for a moment in my younger years, but I was like, realised that wasn't the part of the film industry I wanted to be in. I wasn't right. And but I think so the power of a performance comes through from believing it and understanding it. And that doesn't necessarily even mean that, often it's a subtler way of going because that feels more real. It feels more, I believe that. I believe the words. A great performance will make you take a more, you'll understand. I've read the script hundreds and hundreds of times, right?
Yeah.
Then you see a performance, you're like, well, they've taken that. You've
think
added
of
a
that.
new meaning to what it sort of resonated even more.
Sure.
Even though I know the meaning, there's some more power to it, and I think that comes from that believability. Yeah.
Interesting. All right. So then, to you as a director, what's your sort of management style as a director? Are you the
Vic, what's my
collaborative-
management style?
Vic?
Well,
Do you like to take control? Do you kind of let the magic happen?
yeah, I think I like to be very organised and very planned out,
Yep.
and I try and pre-think what is going to be the most important aspect of a scene, let's say we're on a set that we're doing. What is it about that's going to make me feel right on the day and feel that it's... So the way my brain works is I layer everything up in my head. So, and it's all about... So I sort of start with lenses, and I think how that lens is going to affect... Then I think about the costume and how that costume's going to feel and what I need on that. And it's not necessarily in this order, but these are... So I'm sort of... And then I think of the set and how that needs to feel and how we can... And then who that actor is and what sort of performance they're going to give. And so I'm through pre-production, I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about the specific shots. I'm thinking about how do I make a scene feel alive and believable, or how do I make that story come out in the right way? So it's all about thinking of ideas and thinking of ways to bring that to life. And then on set, I really shouldn't have to do too much.
Okay.
Because it's just a matter of nudging what you've set up.
Yeah, sure.
And every now and again, there'll be a moment where it's like, it's not working, for whatever reason. But generally speaking, the days go pretty smoothly and they're pretty organised because I block out all the scenes and sometimes with stand-ins, sometimes with the actors, but often because of schedule, it's with stand-ins, and I've worked out all the shots and we've worked it all out and we've planned it all out. And I work very closely with the AD, PJ Voten, in this case, who's a brilliant, brilliant guy. And especially with things with fights, they get pre-shot and pre-worked out and pre-planned and broken out, and you build these scenes piece by piece, shot by shot, and so the more you can have
Ahead of time, you mean?
way ahead of time.
Way ahead of time.
Yeah, everything is worked out, and then what's happening is we shoot stuff. It goes into a rough edit of the fight that's been shot on video 3 months ago.
Okay.
With the stunties, and then you start dropping in the shots to make sure it works.
Interesting.
And so then it starts to build like that. It's like a mosaic, really. It's sort of you start to, it's very much like sculpting. It's you're sort of taking pieces away, and so I guess my approach is to think about it a lot in pre-production, do all the rigor of planning and working stuff out and thinking about it and agonizing over stuff, so that when you do come to the shoot day, it's all very much organized, very, very, especially with something like what we're doing, which, the way a piece of armor or the way, that's got to break a certain way. Well, that's got to be decided 2-3 months ago, because they have to
Yeah.
make it. Not only have to make one, they've got to make 5 of them.
Right.
They have to make a soft version. They have to make a hard version. They have to make a so, and then so all this stuff has to be pre-planned. So when you get to set, it's just about I'm just looking. I'm sort of focusing and concentrating on the performance of the actors and giving them the space and the room to move and just give a really authentic performance.
Yeah, great. Interesting. So what, I mean, things don't always go to plan. What's been your most challenging moment on set, would you say? I'm out of the couple of hundred, I'm sure, are now flashing through your mind.
Well, it's hard to. I mean, what's the most challenging?
Or what's a particularly challenging moment you feel like you've had?
Well, I find it challenging when you've planned something and then for whatever reason, I mean, this doesn't happen that often, but it happens where it just doesn't work. Just sort of.
Yeah, right.
It's like for some reason it's just not flying, and you've got to, and that's where you've got to be like, okay, why is this? Why do I feel this? Why am I not believing it? Why is this not landing? What is it about this? And then it's just a matter of. I mean, I quite enjoy that process of having to quickly think on our feet and work out the problem. And I never really feel like. There's not a challenge is probably the wrong word, because I'm like, it's just part of the creative process.
Yeah, okay.
And that's all. I do enjoy that part of it, that aspect of like there was some stuff we did on a scene where there was an extra bit over there. So I just wanted to create a sense of like spontaneity, and this moment happened. And I'm sorry, I'm having to be vague. It's you know, I wouldn't want to ruin the film for you. But we just conjured up this little moment out of nothing, and it was immensely satisfying.
Right.
Because and then we sort of did that many times during the day on this specific sort of week of shooting, where we had to sort of find and create moments. You just sort of get better and better at that, because the more you do it, the more you try something, and so it's all about. And so I enjoy that. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's an enjoyable part of the process. So.
Well, I guess in these Mortal Kombat movies, you know, you've really focused on the world building. You know, you sort of used a lot of natural environments, but then a lot of very specific and sort of vivid worlds and scenes. You know, so and I guess that's a big part of the planning you're going through. I think what I'm hearing is that sometimes there's moments where the unexpected turns out brilliantly, as much as the unexpected might make things fall over. Is that?
Is that on? Yeah. No, I mean, it's my job to make sure they don't fall over.
Right.
So they always have to end up on the positive side of the ledger, even if something does. But it's that tends not to be a big part of it, because there are many thousands of conversations about every aspect of. I mean, it's planned to within an inch of its life.
Interesting. Okay.
So we don't roll up on set thinking, oh, we're gonna
give it a go.
We're gonna bebop and scat today. It's not that at all. I mean, there are little moments, but it's not the nature of this type of filmmaking. It's,
yeah.
I know there are films that I love that are done in that way.
Yeah.
But it's not. And I'm always trying to give ourselves the most amount of time to bring the level of craft up as high as possible. So Steve Winden is the DP on this film, and I want him, and you know, I'm trying to plan and organize, and so that he has as much time and as much creative freedom to make things look as beautiful and as the most authentic, highly crafted rendition of what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Because if we can plan and we can think about stuff as early as possible and get everything really organized, then it just gives every other department, and everyone can bring their A game to the production. So whether that be Cappy, the costume designer, or Nikki, who's the hair and makeup. Everyone, you want to try and give them the most amount of time. So by the way you do that is you have a point of view. You think about it and you know what you want, and then you go in and say, this is what I'm after. So they're not wasting, there's no wastage of sort of time. They can just be as good as possible running down that particular path, if that makes sense. So, that's really, I guess that's another part of my creative process, is to bring the best out in all the brilliant people who, because as a director, my job is to employ people. Right? I've got to surround myself with the best people who are creatively the right people for the job.
Yeah. So it's about allowing them their creativity within your framework.
Yeah, and allowing people to enjoy that process and to deliver the goods. Yeah. And that's why we all want to do it, So I'm not sort of super control-y. I'm not like, I mean, I know exactly what I want, but I then I just try and give people just the space to do it. But I'm very specific about certain things, but I'm not I try not to micromanage as much as I can, because that just gets in the way of people.
No, that's good. So you've brought production to the Gold Coast this time. How's that going for you?
I love it. I absolutely love it here. It's great. I love the place.
Baz Luhrmann loves it too.
Oh, good. Excellent. Well, there's a lot to love here. The stages are fantastic.
Yeah.
The people, the crews that live here are amazing.
Yeah.
And it's a very pleasant part of the world. I mean, there's not a lot wrong with it. It's it just works really well. Is a sort of an effortlessness to the process here.
Yeah, right.
It's a joy. I mean, we shot the first one in Adelaide, and that was great too. I mean, that was very kind of full on. We were breaking new ground. It was the biggest thing that had ever been there, and so that kind of. But everyone in South Australia really rose to the challenge, and there were some beautiful locations there. Yeah. That I was really happy about. So, but we needed a certain kind of scale that Adelaide couldn't really provide, and whereas the Gold Coast can, and that's with the stages, but it's also with the there's certain locations here that we're using that are that I can't say what they are, but that's here as well. So it's sort of often it's not one reason why you go to a place. If it's a couple of reasons, and then it's a bit of a no-brainer to come here. So I think I was really open to coming here just because of what I'd heard, and then there were a couple of creative reasons and some financial reasons. It all just comes together, and it's like, well, that's the perfect place.
There it is. Yeah. That's good. So the first, your first Mortal Kombat film was obviously very successful. HBO Max's biggest launch, and did very well at the box office, etc. So, that's then brought about Mortal Kombat 2. Is there a sort of upscale in things?
It's a much bigger scale,
right? And
it's a bigger scope in that we go off-world more. I can't really sort of say where we go, but it's there were certain things that the Mortal Kombat world has in it already, and I wanted to sort of tap into pushing into some different aspects of that haven't necessarily been in any of the other films or material, or they've never really explored. So I kind of like the idea of there's some stuff in there that's really important Mortal Kombat lore that has just never really been touched. And so Ed Boon, who created the game, he's really excited about some of the stuff we're doing, because it's like he's like, oh, we've never.
Wow. So you're actually working back to that level, creators of the game.
Yeah, Ed's involved. Wow. Yeah, it's great. He's a great guy.
Yeah,
he's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's good. He's been wonderful, and it's a good creative process.
Yeah.
In bringing the most out of what those guys, I'm just sort of standing on their shoulders really of what they've done to this point. So, but yes, it's a much bigger scope.
And on the basis of the success of the first Mortal Kombat, were you thinking Mortal Kombat 2?
I guess the way it works is no one, and certainly the studio feels this way, and I feel the same way. You don't count your chickens. You don't.
Right.
There's none of this sort of assumption that we're going to make a sequel.
Okay.
What Dave, who is he's the key creative exec at New Line, he says, we'll just see if the audience allows us to make another one.
Right.
I.e., if they want another one, we'll know.
Yeah.
And thankfully the eyeballs don't lie. So that everyone at Warner Brothers and New Line's very excited about this, and I think everyone's super excited about where it's going to, just on a sort of a story and tonal, and there's some really interesting new characters, and I wanted to sort of push those out further, and and just listening to what we got right, what we didn't get so right in the first one, and just constantly recalibrating and just trying to be as good as possible as is what we've been working on. Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you for that. I think there's a few questions from our audience.
Hi there, Mr. Simon. Nice to meet you. Let me introduce myself. My name is Jonathan Kong. I'm a recent graduate here from NYFA, Australia. I just completed the one-year filmmaking course. Yeah, so I have a question for you. It's pretty simple. So my question is, what is the best advice that you could give to the students here at NYFA and also the graduates from NYFA?
I would, whether it's whatever creative sort of facet you want to be in, and I'll just assume it's film, but I know there's a lot of stuff. Like, this is a bit of a slightly complex answer to your simple question here. So there's a couple of things. One is you have to be really, really persistent. Do not give up, ever. Everyone is in the same boat. Everyone is working their ass off, and the people that make it are the people that just never give up. So that is my sort of boring, sort of really kind of underlines everything. Just keep on going. Just keep working. Just keep thinking about it, and just push and push and push. So just when I thought I was never going to make a movie in my life, it happened. So you just got to keep on going. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, and probably I'll just keep it at this, because there's a lot of things I would say, but I'll keep it short. When you're watching movies and when you're thinking about them, and you're creating them, think in terms of storytelling. And I know I talked about that before, but really, even if you are not a writer, I'm not a writer, I know my limitations, but understand story and screenwriting and structure, and really get to know that. Even if you don't have the brain or have the ability or have the desire to actually be a writer, get to know it and get to understand it. So then when you bring your the other parts of your brain to that, you have an understanding of what the structure is. So it's a bit like if you're building a house, you want to know how it's being held up. And you want to know, so you understand what makes the story and what creates the story in a fundamental sense. So really, really listen to as many podcasts as you can from really reputable people. Don't sort of worry about all the junky ones. But, there's a couple of great ones. Listen to it, think about it, and just really immerse yourself in storytelling and in different ways. Every person here has a different way of telling a story, and that's what's fantastic. And that's what's great about you watch different things with different approaches and points of view, and it's wonderful. There you go.
All right, thank you, Simon.
Yeah, no worries, mate.
Hello, sir. Nice to meet you.
Hi, mate.
So my name is Joshua Orderson. I'm here at NYFA studying acting, and you spoke about the essence of Mortal Kombat earlier, and I wanted to ask, keeping Mortal Kombat's brutal charm while giving it cinematic life, how did you pull off the gory, fan-pleasing tightrope walk?
Well, it's first and foremost, I guess it's the priority on what to worry about first, and then I never worried about the gore first. I never worried about that. That never led. Now, there were times when I knew, and we all knew, okay, this moment here, let's use the Nitara kill in the first film as an example, which is the most, the bloodiest part of it. So we knew that was an opportunity and a moment there to really go in hard. But ultimately, that wasn't the most important part of it. It was actually sort of the build-up to that point. And so it was really just sort of look at and think, okay, where can the violence, or where can that piece of the DNA from Mortal Kombat, it's a really essential one, how can that become more satisfying because of, and I think we've done a better job in the second film than the first film, so fingers crossed. But where by the time it comes, you care about the character, you care about suspense, the tension has been built, and you want to know what's going to happen, and then that just happens to be a part of it. And so that's really what I'm always thinking about. It's like, how do we make this just have a reason to exist beyond just like, oh, that's bloody and that's cool. So, and also I'm also trying to make really beautiful, elegant versions visually of it. So Chris Godfrey, who's the visual effects supervisor, he still has a thing on his wall that I drew for him on the first film, where I drew what I wanted the blood spray to look like when the hat's going through Nitara. And I just thought there's this big, beautiful kind of like rooster tail of blood. And I think that could be really visually interesting. So he kept it on his wall because he was just like, okay, that's what we're trying to go for all the time. Now, so and I think we've done a better job this time of doing that. And so, yeah, that's really all I'm trying to do, is just make it matter when it comes. It's like, yeah, okay, there it is, but I care about the story and the character to that point.
Yeah, thank you. And I do agree. I think that the first one, absolutely loved it. Definitely made that point.
Yeah, great. Thanks, mate. Thanks a lot.
So that ability to be able to draw, must really help a lot, right, in being able to indicate to people what you're seeing.
Yeah, it does. I'm not that great. I mean, I can get by.
That's not what you told us.
But no, I can. We have. Yes, it is helpful. So one of the sets we were building this time round, it's like every film, I would think. Every production there's always this constant sort of financial pressure. We're not immune to that, right? Yeah. So there was a set that it's a big set. It's a beautiful set, but there was too much VFX in the back of every shot. Right. By the nature, sorry for being vague, but I can't say what it is, right? But I had to work out a way I had to block and work through all the scenes in my head and work all that out to know that, okay, so how are we going to make sure that every shot doesn't have a VFX shot in the back of it, even if it's just a close-up? So I redrew, we'd sort of done up to a certain point on the set, and I redrew the set with this section and a different thing here and there. And it was really helpful to be able to sort of sit and draw that so that then we could talk about it. Yeah. And it's not always just, I do my own boards to explain to people, and then we also block shots with videos and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's sort of a mixture of things, but yeah, it is helpful to be able to draw. Is it a skill
you'd recommend for directors?
Yeah, I think but I think you can get by. It doesn't have to be a work of art, but I think you just need to sort of work on how to get your idea across.
Yeah, sketch.
So a production company I work with in Prague, Vic. I'm always telling Vic stories about when I'm shooting in Prague, and she thinks it's hilarious because I sound like a tosser. But I've shot there a lot, and in Prague in the production company, they've got this stick figure storyboard up on the wall, and I was like, oh, why have you got that there? And they said, we did a job with Martin Scorsese, and that's his storyboard. Yeah, right. So it's like, okay. Yeah. But you look at it, and it's like, I know exactly what is going on. So you don't have to actually draw, but you have to work on getting an understanding of how to get your point across and what the shot or the scene needs. And I think that's then people, because you'll work with people who have been in the business a long time, and they'll go, "Yep, got it. I know what you're talking about." So yeah, thanks, man.
G'day, Simon.
Hi.
How you going?
Good.
I'm Luke Reed. I'm from the Diploma of Acting. I was wondering, you mentioned before this series has been going for nearly 3 decades, and I was wondering how you're getting your actors to play existing characters that have already been in the franchise for a long time.
Well, the great thing about our actors, and they're wonderfully talented and fabulous people, is that they all do their work. So and this is the case with most great actors. They will do the work and they'll do the research and whatever it might be. And they'll come with a really strong point of view on what they feel the character how they should be. Like Ludi, who plays Luke Kang, right? Ludi is a beautiful guy. And he kind of floats through space, and you're like, are your feet on the ground? I mean, and every time he sort of just drifts around, and so it was his idea to have these beads around Luke Kang's, so that's one example. And every actor comes with and Joe Taslim, who plays Sub-Zero, had a really strong point of view about how his body should move and he really thinks about it, and it's really interesting. I mean, should get Joe to give you guys. Actually, we should say Joe would be great, wouldn't he? You'd love Joe. We'll get Joe to come in here and he can talk to you about just his process. So even though he's got a mask on a lot, but they think about the character and then we have a conversation about it. And some of the things I'm like, you know what, that's too far or that's not right. But by and large, everyone came with really good ideas, and some of them we just don't have the time to put them in, or some of them. But I think it's, especially specifically on your question about Mortal Kombat with so much history, you look at it, you soak it up, you think about it, and then what I ultimately want is I want a new take on what's been. I don't want someone just to copy what's been done. So I'm looking to make these characters feel dimensional and real, and you really believe their performance. And so sometimes that means you don't do what has been done because, if I do that, that's going to feel fake and terrible and get in the road of this thing I'm doing over here. So
thanks.
Great. No worries, mate.
How you going, Simon?
Good, mate.
I'm so sorry, my question's fairly big, so I'm worried I'm going to forget it.
Well, at least you're saying it's big before you say it. Not like, I've got a little easy one here.
It's a little bit of one. So I'm an acting student here, and my question is, obviously there's a massive fan base for this film, like, for example, comics, video games, Mortal Kombat 1. But does expanding fan base place a fair amount of pressure on you to make certain choices in terms of, like, the style of the film to keep that fan base, or does this allow you to be adventurous and experiment with the second one? So, like, does it restrict you, the massive fan base? Like, does it restrict you to a certain style of the film, or does it?
No, it doesn't. I don't feel restricted at all. Stylistically, no, not at all. I think I get excited about trying to create a film that people already love the IP of.
Yeah.
Like, that's exciting to me. And there's versions that have been done, and we're doing our version. Yeah. I think I love that. I think so. That's one of the great joys of doing this. And I'm sure the guys who do, superhero films, and it's the same thing. There's something very creatively satisfying about saying, you wait till you see our version of Shao Kahn, for instance. So it's fun, right? It's kind of so I don't feel any pressure. I think it's exciting, and I like I'm trying. I think there's something also very exciting about some surprises that are going to come, that I know are much loved story points or worlds or ideas or realms or specific characters that. So I think about that stuff a lot, and Jeremy Slater, who's the writer, who's a brilliant guy, and he, and the whole sort of creative team around this, we've thought about and discussed that stuff quite a lot. So, we don't ignore the fans, but we don't also let it kind of get us down. So it's kind of, it's exciting. I can't wait for you to see it.
Loving it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Hello, my name is Mason Hannum, and I'm a filmmaker. I'm doing the filmmaking course, and I want to be a director. So what I want to ask you is, how do you work with your DP to achieve your vision?
So I think you want to talk about you sort of start talking about the story and the world and who these characters are. So you want to sort of come at it almost from a non-technical and an emotional point of view to start with. Given the way my brain works, I have a very specific look and feel I'm after, but I want to, like Jermaine McMicking, who was the DP on the first film, has a very very human, tactile, beautiful kind of way about what he shoots and the way he lights. And Steve Winden also has that. There's a quality to what Steve. There's a movie that Steve shot that is coming out soon. That's really, really beautiful, and he shot The Grey Man. And there's a real kind of scale and beauty to the way he lights things, and it has a very. So what I try and do is I look at what they do and what I was just going to look to what is the kind of DNA level creative impulse that a certain person might have, and with a DP I look how they light, and I look how the sensitivity they have with camera, or their ability to sort of move a visual through space, move a camera through space, tell a story with the space and Steve's exceptional at that. Steve is an amazingly gifted guy in his way he tells a story. So as we sort of sit down and we talk about that aspect of it, and then I get to the next level down, which is a more specific thing, which is, I want visual variety in this film. So that means that it doesn't all just feel the same, but it's very, very important that it feels like the same voice, and it feels like the same point of view. And even though we're in a different realm, and it's lit differently, and it's a different color, and it's a different time of day, and with different characters, when we're here in this scene, and then we move to the next scene, there is a quality, a visual quality that goes through across the whole film. And I think Star Wars is a good example of that, where there's different worlds and so forth, but there's a tonality to the quality of the way that looks and feels. So we talk about lenses to do that. There's a very specific set of lenses that I love using, the Panavision Ultra Vistas, and we used on the first film, we're using it on the second film, but the second film is going to be for IMAX as well, so where it's going to be there's certain things in the second one that kind of will be made for IMAX. So that brought up another sort of whole technical part of the process and what those lenses are, because the Ultra Vistas are anamorphic, which doesn't use all the use the real estate on the IMAX screen. Blah, 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 blah. So we go in. So there's lots of different levels to the conversation, I guess, is my kind of overall answer. They are very emotional and very kind of creative, story-led and character-led, and then we get down and sort of let it. But it's always going back to that. It's always going sort of, we're always checking that off, and then Steve will just say, hey, what if we did a shot like this? And I'm like, oh, awesome. And it gets down to that, like, oh, this would be cool. And Steve's a super excited, enthusiastic, really lovely. And so we just have a good time sort of making. Like there's one shot in a scene that we've already shot of, where someone has to be revealed, and the way Steve thought of using the camera to reveal that character, or to reveal this moment or a change of like point of view, was just genius. So it's also allowing everyone creatively, I was saying a bit before, to feel like they have the room to just throw ideas, because they're not all my ideas. In fact, not many of them are. You know, my job is to aggregate ideas and go, yep, that's awesome. No, we won't use that one. Will you? So then that's what pieces it together.
Yeah, sweet. Thank you so much.
No worries, mate.
Thank you.
We're down to our last question. It's you, Jake. This is Jake.
Hey, Simon. My name's Jake. I'm part of the Advanced Filmmaking Group. I've got a question today just to ask, how do you execute a large-scale production?
One step at a time.
Just some tips.
Yeah. Well, and when I guess what you should break it into small parts.
Yeah.
So it's understand what the scope of it is, but never feel overwhelmed by how big something might be, because you can break it down and break it down and break it down into facets and pieces, and you just build it together, like I was saying before, like a mosaic. So you generally have the time. So time is on your side. Like in pre-production, we've been in pre-production for, I think it was 3 months, and there's a lot of conversations happen in that, but there's a lot of really smart people in the room that know what they're doing. So you can actually get through. You can work stuff out there's a methodology that's worked out to create big films and to create. So it doesn't mean you always do exactly as everyone else has done, because sometimes, for me as a director, I'm always looking at how process can be your friend, but it also can be your enemy, where it's human nature for everyone just to fit into the normal furrows of how a film's made. And sometimes that means you just end up with generic stuff. That's why a lot of films just feel like the next film, because they just allow the furrows to just, okay, that's how we do it. Whereas you've got to think about, no, this process, I have to break the process to get to what I want. So it's just a constant sort of, but I would say just piece by piece, and know that it's like anything. You do something you want to tell a story about someone walking into a room, sitting here, putting a bottle down, and then they're going to walk out, and then so you think, okay, well, how's the best we're going to do that? So do we need a wide shot? Do we need, do we want to shoot it? We want to start over here. How do we want to visually tell that story? Okay, what do we? So you just take, and there's so many billions of pieces of decision and facets within any production, but it's no different to a large-scale production. It's just hard to do it if you didn't have much time, but with the right amount of time, you can actually just plan it accordingly. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Thank you.
Great. Sure, mate.
Planning, huh?
Yeah.
Planning.
There's creative fun as well. But
Yeah. Just one thing that came to mind for me there, you're obviously on some pretty big advertising shoot sets. Was it a leap to sort of the size and scale of Mortal Kombat? And did that require a kind of mental adjustment for you?
No, I think that's the thing, that there's many days on set that I've been on commercials that feel bigger than some of the days on Mortal Kombat. So it's just that I would do 9 of them in a row rather than 98 in a row.
Yeah.
So and also the big difference I was saying before is that story. So I've got to a point where I know what's required to manifest something by using the shoot day well.
Appropriate.
You know what I mean? And however big that is, however many elephants and, planes and explosions. It doesn't. There's a methodology, and I know that methodology.
Yeah.
So that aspect of it, no, you sort of get to a point where, so the days never felt overwhelming at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a real pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much. I think you've offered a huge amount to our students here at NYFA Australia, so really appreciate you taking some time out of the day. Thank you very much. Simon McQuoid, everyone.